And when the Taliban came back into power this time around, they said, well, we've learned we're not the same Taliban.
Afghanistan's overall situation, including economy, security, employment, and everything, because we're talking about half of the country's population. And you can't really decide to disallow half of the country's population to
I
work.
can just understand like Afghanistan population or the pupils that living there, nobody is except the Taliban. And they are surviving with really hardship without education.
Hello viewers, you're watching It Matters and I'm your host Kashantakal. Since the US has retrieved their forces from Afghanistan in 2021, it has marked the end of 20 years of bloodshedding war in Afghanistan. But it also marks the return of the Taliban regime in the country. The Taliban is known for the suppression of the basic human rights like right to education, freedom of speech, etc. This kind of suppression is especially imposed on the women of the country. Many Afghans fearing the oppressive regime fled Afghanistan. Recently in Afghanistan, Taliban has restricted women and the girls of the country from working, going to public places like universities, schools, parks, gyms, etc. Let's have a quick discussion with the diplomats and experts to get to know their point of view on the issue. Taliban has banned the women and the girls of the country from using the public places like parks, gyms, universities, schools. How do you see this action by the same Taliban government who earlier this year promised its citizens in front of the whole world that they are going to provide them with full security, development, and now it's just a fake promise by Taliban?
And this is an area where the Taliban have spectacularly failed to deliver on what they promised. And so if we go back to what happened when the Taliban once again swept back into power and they seized Kabul, at that time there was a real concern that the Taliban, we're going to see a return to the 1990s. So the Taliban originally rose up to power in the mid-1990s. They brought a very harsh form of rule based on their interpretation of Islamic teachings, and it was only their interpretation. And in particular, there were very repressive measures towards women and girls. And when the Taliban came back into power this time around, they said, well, we've learned we're not the same Taliban. And we're going to protect the rights of women. They specifically said that. They said we're going to protect the rights of women. We're going to provide opportunities for women to work and to obviously pursue an education. All of these things they said they would do. And they said there would be free speech. All of that, they have actually done the exact opposite. They've suppressed free speech. They've engaged in a campaign of repression against groups that they see as opposed to them.
This is exactly the type of governance that we would expect from a body that is uninterested in the administration of the country, but rather in governing social mores, public behavior, et cetera, et cetera. Number two, I think it's also reflective of and indicative of divisions within the Taliban itself, which we're getting kind of second and third hand reflections of. There are generational differences within the Taliban. There are ideological differences within the Taliban. Some are more hardcore. Those more hardcore and tend to be older elements are frankly on top right now. But there's also a younger kind of reformist wing of the Taliban that we also hear the Taliban talking about how they will secure the safety of the citizenry of Afghanistan, how they will construct an inclusive government and reach out to other non-Taliban stakeholders in the power structure in Afghanistan.
With regards to their promises versus realities on the ground with regards to basic rights and civic liberties and women's rights, I don't think the Taliban are contradicting themselves. Between 1996 and 2001, when they first ruled the country, they had a similar draconian policies where women were not allowed to work. They were not able to move out of their homes without a male escort and a certain definition of an outfit that the Taliban had introduced.
I feel so sorry about this, the bandit day school door and university for females especially. And it's going to be really worse day by day. And they're not staying on their promise that they did. And they just want to show themselves very nice government, very useful government for the world, especially for the United Nations. They were just waiting to receive everything from Afghanistan government, and they receive all the things, they receive the power, and after that they start to be like very like with unusual manner, and they start to stop everything, especially for females.
The other important sector is the economic sector, where we can witness that Afghanistan's economy was already deteriorating before Taliban took over in 2021. At the current stage, we can see hunger crisis in a lot of places in Afghanistan, in a lot of households in Afghanistan. On the top of it, Taliban has just simply removed a significant amount of people from the workplaces. How do you see this action?
For a long time, especially immediately following the withdrawal, there were increasing sanctions on the Taliban, which restricted inflow of cash to the country from the Afghan diaspora. And there's a global Afghan diaspora, right? It's in Australia, it's in India, it's in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And there are still today by the US Treasury Department limits on how much can be sent back by individual Afghans to Afghanistan. So it really restricts the inflow of cash. We also have the fact that the Biden administration has seized upwards of $8 or $9 billion in the foreign reserves of the Central Bank of Afghanistan.
Major drivers of economic collapse in Afghanistan are it was a crop failure due to economic and environmental conditions. Of course, we've had terrible floods in the area as well last year. But also, it's a cash economy. It has been fundamentally a cash economy. It has been for decades. And during the war, from literally for the last 20 years, the Western war, the West was pumping, hundreds of millions of dollars into Afghanistan to sustain the economy. So that injection of cash was very, very important for sustaining the economy, and that all stopped in 2021. So that combined with crop failure, I think, are the major drivers.
Certainly a contribution to the worsening of Afghanistan's overall situation, including economy, security, employment, and everything, because we're talking about half of the country's population. And you can't really decide to disallow half of the country's population to work or get access to education. So there will be a direct impact on the country's economy, security, and service sector, everything.
For more videos like this, subscribe to It Matters. Please don't forget to like, share. Also comment down below what else should I cover in my videos. Put the notification icon on to not to miss any video from It Matters.